Thank you, Professor Meoli. So I have a couple of questions, but of course I will definitely be hogging the mic, so I'd like to open this up to the floor. If you have questions, please come up to the mic and ask. Yes, please. Can we have the mic at the front switched on?
My name is Coppens. I am from Burundi. And as I explained yesterday, we are in the process of putting in place the first internet exchange point in Burundi. And I was very interested by all presentations, but during those presentations, one of the the first presenter, raised a special question to me. There is on one slide where it was written that we can use data to market the exchange. Maybe I didn't get it in the right context, but I want to know exactly how are you going to use the data. Is it the traffic? Is it the real information? Or maybe if you use the data, maybe the owner of the data are going to interpret negatively. Why are you using the data to market your own exchange? Maybe I didn't get it in the right context. I want to get just explanation from you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take all the questions first.
Okay. Hi, Michael Kendi with the Internet Society. Before I joined the Internet Society, I was in the Gambia early this year working on an IXP project, and it was right around the time that the ACE cable was going to turn on, and so provide a lot more international capacity before they were going through Senegal at quite expensive rates. And at the time it struck me, and now I can ask, I mean, using the measurements from these probes, is it possible to go back and see the impact of turning on the cable on latency, speeds, etc.? And if not, if no one's done that, is that possible? Because it seems to me this is happening all around Africa. New cables are coming on, new backbones, billions of dollars of investment. So it would be nice to be able to tie that to actual results. And separately we can start, and I'd like to start gathering prices and availability and usage and kind of pinpoint it, but here there's something that's retroactive, and I was just wondering if it's possible to look at that, or if anyone's done that and say, well, the cable went online in February and look what happened to the speeds. I mean, it won't be as dramatic as the one you showed, but hopefully there'll be some impact. Thank you.
Hi, Graham Benneker from South Africa. Emil and Martin both spoke about BGP data and gathering of BGP data. Have you noticed any distinct lack of BGP data from Africa? Because when I look at some of the data that seems to be available from RIS and from root views, there seems to be a lack of feeds from South African networks. Well, African networks in general.
Okay, go.
Politicians normally respond to the last question first and then forget to answer the first question because they don't want to answer it. This is not that case, but I will answer the third question. There is an absolute, there's less data being collected in Africa from BGP IP backbones than any other region in the world, and improving that would make tools like ours, or the tools that RIPE runs, or other entities, CAIDA in the University of California, San Diego, and one other that has escaped me for the second. All of those sort of third-party measurement entities that use this public data would generate far more useful information over Africa if there was more route collecting. And route collecting can normally center around internet exchanges. It is a valuable data. The internet is this very changing complex mesh of networks, and being able to measure it, and more importantly, this actually in a way goes back to Michael Kendall's question about, we put a new cable in, did it make a difference? It turns out that historic data is really valuable. The ability to go back and see what happened yesterday or the day before when a network event happened can actually be very valuable. But we don't have very much data collection in Africa, and this is something that could definitely improve.
So to add to what Martin's saying, where is he? Graham. One of the problems I think we have is we're always saying we're waiting for people to bring these tools to us. We're waiting for people to, well, install a root views collector in our country, and until you do, well, there's no point in me sending you my prefixes. So in a past life, I was a semi-network admin at an ISP in South Africa, and at the time we provided data collection mechanisms, BGP feeds to the RIPE, to the root views project, to the RIPE RIS project from as far back as, I think, 2001. So the message for the operators in the room is that you shouldn't be waiting for the root views guys to say, we're coming to you. If you want to distribute information, if you'd like to see or get visibility on your network from an external perspective, then there are a bunch of people here that can help. I'll point to Martin because he can help. I can help you as well, and there are a whole bunch of people in the audiences who may want to take a stab at raising your hands. If nobody wants to raise their hands. No? Okay, so speak to Martin and myself and Emil, and we can help contact you, get you in contact, and Graham, of course, and we can help get you in contact with the root views, get you what's needed so that you can get, and I think this is the important part that people miss, you get a view into what your network looks like, and that's the real value, at least for me, from a measurement perspective. Forgetting anything else that would actually come out of that, it's what your network looks like from the outside.
There was one more question asked by Mr. Coppens. Yeah. You want to ask?
Yes, so for the Michael's question about the installing the cable in the Gambia, if you see that is dependent on if the right data was collected at that point, and I don't know if that was the case or not. But if you are, you can also see it the other way. When a cable is at the point of being deployed, be sure that that the right data is being collected at that point, because then you can actually see, did this latency go down? Did we see an improvement? So, and I'm happy to actually look at this specific case and see if we can see something there.
So to add to that answer, not that I like jumping on everyone's answers, but I can tell you there were no probes in Gambia, and this is really sad. And this is an example of what Martin Levy was saying. It's really difficult. Well, in here it's impossible to get that kind of data because sadly we didn't have a measurement tool. The first probe, the first RIPE Atlas probe, went live in the Gambia. It was given to the gentleman during the ICANN meeting in Durban in July. He would have gotten it online towards the end of July, August. So we can happily tell you that there are measurements coming from that period of time onwards. But sadly, before that, it's incredibly difficult to get measurements. So again, an appeal to those countries, if you remember the map, or if you're online now, if you go to atlas.ripe.net, if you see your country has got nothing in it, or a probe that's not online, or even worse, if you have a probe and you've not got it online, and there are at least 2 people in this audience that do, please put them online, or if your probe's not working, speak to 1 or 2 of us and we'll try and help you.
So Coppens had asked a question regarding how do you market your IXP using the data. So I'll give you an example of something we did in Kenya. We have the route views collector. And I was always curious of the data that it collects. What value can we get out of it? So since we have had historical data collected with the route views, I think going back to 2005, I wanted to see, can I actually plot the growth of networks that show up at the exchange point? And then plot also what percentage of them were local and what percentage of them were actually international. That means autonomous system numbers that are outside of Kenya. And after plotting this, we were actually quite surprised at how many AS numbers that were registered outside of Kenya that were actually visible at the exchange point in Kenya. We reached a point where almost 50% of the AS numbers that you could see at the exchange point had a destination point that was outside the boundaries of Kenya, and the other 50% were local. And we had almost, I think that time we had almost about 70 autonomous system numbers. And what it took was a collector that was sitting there collecting data, but nobody actually ever dug into it. And so in one of those moments where you're thinking, what can we actually do with this data? I got in contact with a PhD student from Tanzania, which is the irony is that in Kenya, and I got a PhD student in Europe from Tanzania who wrote the code to actually analyze the views, the collected data from the route views, and now we have something online that tells us our growth in terms of prefixes, autonomous systems. And so when we talk about KIXP, you will see a slide there showing over 50% of the autonomous system numbers come from this country, and this country, or rather are local, and the others are international, and what percentage come from the East African region, and so on and so forth. So that is data you can use to, when you're going out to talk to content providers and say, come to KIXP because you will be able to find this type of networks, and this is their distribution from the region. So when Barry and Fiona and the rest of the team at KIXP are going out to say, to talk to providers and position KIXP as a regional IXP, the data they have is to show, we are not just Kenyan, but we have autonomous system numbers that are beyond our boundaries.
Thanks. And from a more simplistic point of view, as I said, what is very important for new potential participants at your exchange is how much value are other people already getting from the value. So you can make certain data available on a public website, just for example, that new potential peers will use to make a decision as to where they appear. Also, it's not necessarily getting just new participants. If you know what's happening on your network, you can then start looking strategically at who is talking to who at your network, and you can start facilitating introductions to people that might not necessarily have thought previously that they should have a relationship, or might not even have known that they are at the same exchange point. So if you know exactly what is happening on your IXP. As an IXP operator, you can strategically start doing introductions between members. And that is a form of marketing internally to people that are already on the exchange. The goal at the end of the day is to grow the exchange. So the more data you have, the easier it is to make decisions.
A question?
Merci, Michuki. Je vais parler en français. Je suis Khoudiagué de l'Université Cheikh Anta Diop de Dakar. J'ai une question par rapport à la recherche.
With regards to research, in our university we have 2 NCC as of 2011 in the name of Qaida, ArcNodes. As an engineer, it helps me analyze some metrics. However, for students, PhD students who may be interested in measurement topic, what kind of collaboration would you offer to them? How does it work? Is there going to be a partnership with RIPE, with Afrinit or Hurricane so that they can conduct research in the field of measurement?
I try to ask the question in English. How could you help the students, the PhD students, to go deeper with their research on measurements, rather than just having a broad class method? Is useful for me as an engineer, but for students doing his PhD and who is interested to do more research on measurement, what kind of collaboration would you give to those universities?
Well, thank you for the question. First, the data is open, and I think that's for any students at what level they are, they can just work with the data. And actually, if you're hosting a probe, you have credits, and with these credits, you can have your students make measurements and learn how to measure and learn how to analyze data. That is, and I've been working with one lecturer in particular, and she's in New York, who's actually doing this now. She took Live Atlas as part of her curriculum. She had enough credits on the whole system, and so she could have like a measurement lab for students and actually have them learn how to do certain things. So that is one thing that I could think of. I hope that answers the question.
I think again for the measurement lab that we have installed, it's, the data is open, and anyone with an internet measurements research interest actually doesn't only get access to the node that is in Nairobi, but can get access to all the nodes that are everywhere else and collect the data. But the other very interesting part is that the measurement lab people are mostly academics, and they allow, say, a PhD student, if they are developing a tool that needs to collect special data, they can be allowed to host the tool in the measurement lab. So you can put your own experimental tool. You don't have to use the 5 that are there. It's just that it has to go through. It has to be checked by the academic community that manages the measurement lab. And then you can put your tool there, collect the data that you need, and write up your thesis. So we actually think that it is that this is something we want to do. We don't want to use the measurement labs and all these tools just for running the current network, but we want it to be also a research platform.
The same goes, the data that Hurricane Electric presents is data that we aren't collecting, but other players are collecting and are providing the data in a very open and usable form. So there's actually another key point to the conversation that we've just had, which is relevant for any student that starts down this path. These are all tools. We saw the map from the Ripe Atlas probe, which may be the best map to talk against. These are tools that are measuring from many places around the internet, because your measurement is going to be different. Your view of the internet is going to be different, whether you're in Gambia or South Africa or Amsterdam or New York or San Francisco, California. It's going to look different. But by using some of these distributed tools that enable you to collect that data and correlate how things look, you actually start to either validate or you start to build an alternate view from what you see from sitting at your desk, sitting in your classroom, sitting anywhere. So these open sources of data become doubly valuable because the internet looks quite different from different places, and it's quite important to run analysis from many places. I'm going to talk about one last project quickly, which in theory should be part of what we talk about here, and that's the NL Ring project from the NL NOG group in the Netherlands. And this is a slightly different take, but of similar distributed and validated. You talked about authentication, peer review really is what you talked about before running tools. The NL Ring project, which is easy to search and find, is a project that enables you to bring up a node within inside your network that is set up specifically for network testing. We think of simple tests like ping and traceroute, but it does more than that. But more importantly, the whole concept of the word ring is that the identical software, the identical configured machine is available in hundreds of other networks around the globe. And now, instead of doing a ping and a traceroute from your network outwards, you can in fact do batch commands to run 200 plus traceroutes or pings or other tests inbound to your network or to somebody somewhere else. This gives you a whole different view of how your network operates. And the NL Ring project is another example of once you're sort of vetted and you're running a machine that is nicely benchmarked and equivalent to all the other machines, you can then grab an enormous amount of data. This isn't quite as open as the work that RIPE is doing or the Oregon Route Views is doing, in the sense that you have to participate in order to get access to the rest of the network. But it is growing very quickly, and if you're a network operator, it would well be worth looking at this, because it's another way of measuring the quality of your own network.
Okay, thank you very much. I think because of time, we need to stop here. Let's put our hands together and recognize the real good contribution that we've had from this panel, like excellent panel. In closing, I think one of the things that have come out very clearly from this discussion is that collecting data is important. There is very little visibility happening in Africa. We really need to do more. And we cannot expect somebody from out there to come and do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. So we have to play the part in collecting this data, putting it out there so that it can be used to provide the information that is we need to see to inform the various groups. And one particular group which I had missed, I think, which Professor Meoli mentioned, is the consumer group. So that makes it 5 groups that need the data to make informed decision in their respective categories. So with that, I'd like to close this session and invite David Bekele for the closing remarks. Thank you very much.
By the time he